Now, what I am showing to you is PD 1613, anti-arson, but this is simply called simple arson. Simple as compared to the heinous one, which you can find under Article 320 of the RPC. So what is arson in the first place? Malicious destruction of property by fire, meaning to say, there is intention, there is malice on destroying a property by means of fire. The accused, either another person or the owner himself of the property subject of the fire. So, who can be held liable? Any person who burns or sets fire to the property of another shall be punished by prison mayor. So, if you notice, the penalty is low because, as what I have mentioned earlier, we are dealing with simple arson. Same penalty shall be imposed when a person sets fire to his own property under circumstances which expose to danger the life or property of another. Take note of the phrase, which expose to danger the life or property of another. In other words, you can set fire on property. In fact, pwede maghuga magdaog. But the moment it would expose to danger the life or property of another, then you can be made liable under PD 1613. Simple because the damage that it may cause is not that grave as compared to the heinous one, destructive arson, as provided under Article 320 of the RPC. So you have there destructive arson under 320 as amended by RA 7659. 7659, so this is the law that enumerates on what constitutes heinous crime, wherein the penalty of reclusion perpetua to death shall be imposed upon the accused. As compared to earlier, it's only prison mayor. So just go over on what constitutes or what is included in Article 320. And then you have there the definition. So if you, continuation. So if you notice, it involves the public already as compared to the second portion wherein it would only, you would only be made liable for arson if you put to danger the life of or property of another. So meaning to say, if you set your property, your own property to fire and then naakasabungtod, ikaw ra nag-inusara dito, why manghilabot nimo, di ba? So irrespective of the application of the above enumerated qualifying circumstances, the penalty of reclusion perpetua to death shall likewise be imposed when the arson is perpetrated or committed by two or more persons or by a group of persons, regardless of whether their purpose is merely to burn or destroy a building, or the burning merely constitutes an overt act in the commission of another violation of the law. This is still a continuation of destructive arson wherein the penalty for reclusion perpetua to death shall be imposed. So if the subject of the burning could be an arsenal, shipyard, storehouse, or military power of fireworks factory, ordnance, storehouse, archives, or general museum of the government. And then you have there, in an inhabited place, any storehouse or factory of inflammable or explosive materials, if as a consequence of the commission of any of the acts, death results. Now, take note that there is no proof that the principal intent of the accused is to kill a person. Remember in Article 14, one of the aggravating circumstances, and in the definition of murder, which you will have later on, killing a person by means of fire is murder. So how do you distinguish it now if there is a fire and in the course of the fire, someone dies? If you have no evidence that the principal intent of the accused is to kill that person, then the crime is arson. But if the principal intent of the accused is to kill a person and he uses fire to kill that person, then the crime shall be murder. Another scenario, if the principal intent of the person is really to kill, either he killed it with treachery or there was a fight between the two of them, so it was homicide, and as a way to conceal the crime he committed, he burned the house to which it includes the victim. So what crime is committed? Separate crimes of murder or homicide and arson. Because the arson there was used to conceal the other crime. The arson there, the fire there was not used to kill the person. It was only used to conceal. So separate information for arson and murder or homicide as the case may be. Okay, so I hope you were able to follow the distinction so that you can answer properly if you will be asked what crime was committed by the accused. Okay, so I have there a table distinguishing destructive arson from simple arson. So if it is destructive arson, the law governs is Article 320 of the RPC. Simple arson, PD 1613. Destructive arson characterized as heinous, while in simple arson, not heinous. There is lesser degree of perversity and viciousness or less significant to social, economic, political, and national security implications. Hence, the penalty is only prison mayor. Unlike in destructive arson, it is so grievous, it's so odious, unhelpful, vicious, atrocity, outrageous, and perversity on the part of the accused. Hence, the penalty shall be reclusion perpetua to death. We have there the so-called other cases of arson, wherein the penalty of reclusion temporal to reclusion perpetua shall be imposed. If what is being burned is any building used as office of the government or any of its agencies, reclusion temporal to reclusion perpetua shall be imposed. Now, take note, this any building could be private or public building. But as far as private building is concerned, it must be used as an office of the government or any of its agency. Second, any inhabited house or dwelling. Third, industrial establishment, shipyard, oil well, or mine shaft, platform, or tunnel. Any plantation, farm, pasture land, growing crop, grain field, orchard, bamboo grove, or forest. Any rice mill, sugar mill, cane mill, or mill central, or any railway or bus station, airport, wharf, or warehouse. What aggravates arson? So these are special aggravating. So the maximum penalty shall be imposed if the same was committed with intent to gain. If it is committed, so the maximum penalty shall be imposed if the same was committed with intent to gain. If it is committed for the benefit of another, meaning to say a person was hired to do it for himself, to do it for the interest of another person. If the offender is motivated by spite, hatred towards the owner or occupant of the house or property burned. If it is committed by a syndicate, it is considered to be committed by a syndicate if it is planned and carried out by a group of 3 or more persons. Okay, 3 or more. How about kung 2 lang? They conspire with each other, but you cannot consider them to be a syndicate because to be a syndicate, it must be committed by at least 3. Where death results, so if by reason or on occasion of the arson, death results, reclusion perpetua to death shall be imposed. So this one, I already mentioned this earlier, and in fact, I've also mentioned about separate filing of murder or homicide and arson as the case may be. These are instances where arson is committed. Prima facie evidence. So when we say prima facie evidence, if unrefuted, is sufficient to convict the accused beyond a reasonable doubt. Okay? Sufficient to convict him beyond reasonable doubt. If the fire started simultaneously in more than one part of the building or establishment. So by that alone, we can say that it is not accidental, it is intentional because it would be impossible for a fire to start simultaneously in more than one part of the building. Na ay sa ground floor, na ay sa third floor. So, it must be intentional. So, that constitutes prima facie evidence of arson. Next, if substantial amount of flammable substances or materials are stored within the building, and the same is not necessary in the business of the offender nor for household use. So, prima facie evidence. So, if you are a department store or a grocery at that, so why are you storing gasoline in the premises? Same with the household. Hence, that constitutes prima facie evidence of arson. If gasoline, kerosene, petroleum, or other flammable or combustible substances or materials soaked therewith or containers thereof, or any mechanical, electrical, chemical, or electronic contrivance designed to start a fire, or ashes or traces of any of the foregoing are found in the ruins or premises of the born building or property. Now, if you notice, if a building is on fire, ato man ang pagmono. Thereafter, an investigation has to be done by the fire officers to rule out arson. So if you notice, sometimes they would say it is really an accident. It was not intentional. But if in the ruins, they can see these instances, kita baka diturog ka ng gasoline, manimaho man sad yun na, di ba? And then there is that lighter. So this would actually confirm that the fire is actually arson. It was intentional or malicious. If the building or property is insured for substantially more than its actual value, another instance of arson. Because we can conclude that the purpose of the burning is to collect the insurance proceeds. If during the lifetime of the corresponding fire insurance policy, more than 2 fires have occurred in the same or other premises owned under the control of the offender or insured. Another instance wherein prima facie evidence of arson can be established. Sige, lagsunog, asyaro, di ba? If shortly before the fire, a substantial portion of the effects insured and stored in the building or property had been withdrawn from the premises except in the ordinary course of business. Okay, except in the ordinary course of business. So if you are a department store and it's already 11 or 12 midnight, why is it that there are trailer vans coming in and out of the premises? It could be that you are also saving some of the inventory that you have there in the department store before setting it on fire. So that is another prima facie evidence for arson. Next, if a demand for money or other valuable consideration was made before the fire in exchange for the desistance of the offender or for the safety of any person or property of the victim, sort of blackmailing. Okay, so you had been blackmailed, and then if you would not give in to their demand, you were threatened that your building will be on fire. So the threat that was done earlier or the demand for money shall be an evidence for arson. Conspiracy to commit arson shall be punished by prison mayor. So this is another exception that mere conspiracy is not punishable, diba? So exception, conspiracy to commit arson. Mere conspiracy is punishable. If the owner of the building cannot prove that he has no participation nor knowledge of such arson, despite the exercise of due diligence, under Section 8, the building which is the subject of the arson, including the land, shall be confiscated and escheated to the state. Okay, so he has to prove otherwise. The burden of proof lies with the owner that indeed he has no knowledge or participation of the fire. Let's review a little on the stages of execution. When shall it be attempted arson? Frustrated? When shall it be consummated? A person intending to burn a wooden structure collects some rags, soaks them in gasoline, and places them beside the wooden wall of the building. When he is about to light a match to set fire the rags, he is discovered by another who chases him away. What crime is committed? Take note, he is not yet able to set fire. But why do we say attempted? Because remember on the stage, on the subjective phase, he already passed through the subjective phase. It's already on the objective phase in the commission of the crime. There is no other way that this person is attempting to commit arson because he already soaks the rugs, placed it near the wall, and he is about to fire. It would have been different if he was caught buying a gallon of gasoline because it could be done or it could be used for a lawful purpose. So at that stage, it is still subjective. You cannot charge him for attempted arson too early, premature. But here, he soaked already the rug with the gasoline, placed it near the wooden structure. Unsaon man to niya, ano iya man tong gisok o gasoline ang rug, di ba? Manglabas siya sa rug with the use of gasoline. Lahi sad. Okay? Next scenario. If that person is able to light or set fire to the rugs, but the fire was put out before any part of the building was burned, then it is frustrated. Okay? No part of the building is yet set on fire. Pero, nakapasiga na siya sa rug. But if before the fire was put out, it had burned a part of the building, it is already considered to be consummated. Another scenario. Now, take note, the illustration that we have, it was done outside. But if you did it inside the building, inside the structure, nakapasiga na ka, even if no portion of the house was burned, ang katulang rug, nasiga, napalong because you have there a fire extinguisher, for example, the crime would be consummated arson already because the fire was inside the structure or building.